Oaks in Office, Biblical Essays for Political Leaders, Chapter 22, Alcohol in Office. As you know, I frequent the book of Proverbs. Of the 66 books of the Bible, this one is perhaps the most applicable to those choosing to live their life under the scrutiny of the White Dome. Through Proverbs, King Solomon of Israel is instructing his son Rehoboam on how to live skillfully in government leadership. Our nation's leaders can gain much from the study of this book. Proverbs 23, verses 31 through 32 says, "Do not look on the wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it goes down smoothly. At the last it bites like a serpent and stings like a viper." Long ago, with the help of one of my seminary professors, I outlined and analyzed the 31 chapters of the book of Proverbs. This Old Testament book contains 915 proverbs that my professor divided into 6 main divisions for study. Number 1, spiritual wisdom. 2, personal wisdom. 3, family wisdom. Number 4, intellectual wisdom. 5, marketplace wisdom. And 6, societal wisdom. Under these 6 main divisions, I developed 87 subcategories and exhaustive outlines. What came out of this 3-year exercise are studies for public servants that afford them an opportunity to grow in wisdom in many pertinent areas. The fruit of that process is to be found throughout this book, as you have already seen. Now, under the category of personal wisdom, we tackle the subject of alcohol. What follows is all the Proverbs has to say about alcohol. Because alcoholic beverages are so available in the capital community, especially during free receptions and dinners, they can become your greatest enemy. Alcohol can lead to ruin. A special word is in order here. Do not partake of everything that is free. It is not always in your best interest. Do not be like the kid in the candy store without self-control. The surrealism of the capital environment, coupled with being away from home, can corrupt you faster than you think. Remember the words of the Apostle Paul when he said, "I discipline my body and make it my slave," 1 Corinthians 9:27. I have noticed that those without personal discipline do not function well here in the capital, especially when it comes to booze and food. Here is what Solomon has to say regarding alcohol to his son, who would one day lead the nation. The present fruits of fermentation. Wine is a mocker, strong drink a brawler, and whoever is intoxicated by it is not wise. Proverbs 20, verse 1. Biblical history records that since the days of Noah, Genesis 9:21, the love of wine and strong drink has deceived and shamed many. Mocker has the idea of scoffing, and a brawler carries the meaning of being violent, loud, and uncontrollable. These are the fruits of the fermented grape, so to speak. What's doubly sad is that these characteristics overcome drinkers before they are aware of it, while the drink fails to deliver the pleasure they are seeking. Noah is an example of one who drinks excessively from his own vineyard. He soon loses respect and dignity in the sight of his inner family. Notice how this is expressed in Proverbs 23, verses 29 through 35. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has contentions? Who has complaining? Who has wounds without cause? Who has redness of eyes? Those who linger long over wine, those who go to taste mixed wine. Do not look on the wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it goes down smoothly. At the last it bites like a serpent and stings like a viper. Your eyes will see strange things, and your mind will utter perverse things. And you will be like one who lies down in the middle of the sea, or like one who lies down on the top of a mast. They struck me, but I did not become ill. They beat me, but I did not know it. When shall I awake? I will seek another drink. One's governing reason is lost when alcohol is used wrongly. In place of reason are lust, appetite, and passion. As a result, the mind utters perverse things. It's not surprising that in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul commands, "And do not get drunk with wine," in Ephesians 5:18. The future fruits of fermentation. Excessive drinking can change your trajectory, causing you to lose sight of the goals you have charted for your life. Proverbs 23, verses 19 through 21 states, "Listen, my son, and be wise, and direct your heart in the way. Do not be with heavy drinkers of wine, or with gluttonous eaters of meat, for the heavy drinker and the glutton will come to poverty, and drowsiness will clothe one with rags." Much of Proverbs talks about how those you choose to fellowship with affect your life. Proverbs 4:14 through 17 states, "Do not enter the path of the wicked, and do not proceed in the way of evil men. Avoid it, do not pass by it. Turn away from it and pass on. For they cannot sleep unless they do evil, and they are robbed of sleep unless they make someone stumble. For they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence." Hanging out with wicked people quickly loosens one's attachment to instruction. Cultivating such relationships quickly causes you to forsake the way of God. The results over the long term are a lack of personal productivity, poverty, and clothing oneself with rags. Skid Row serves to illustrate this truth. A majority of those on our nation's streets suffer from alcoholism or other substance addictions. The following proverb underscores this. "He who loves pleasure will become a poor man. He who loves wine and oil will not become rich." Proverbs 21:17. Policies to overcome poverty that do not take into account these Solomonic truths are woefully inadequate. The solution to poverty lies in the formation of Christian character. This is why the institution of the church is so much better equipped to handle the problem of poverty than it is the institution of the state. The church is designed by God to address the issues of the heart, where the real problem of alcohol dependency lies in the majority of cases. Fermentation and leaders. It is not for kings to drink wine or for rulers to desire strong drink, for they will drink and forget what is decreed and pervert the rights of all the afflicted. Proverbs 31, verses 4 through 5. In the book of Esther, King Xerxes becomes merry with wine and orders his wife to come display her beauty before the people and the princes. Esther chapter 1, verse 11. In the New Testament, we read that when King Herod asks for the head of John the Baptist, it is in the middle of a feast in Mark 6:21. Both serve to illustrate the truth of this proverb in terms of state leadership. The drunkenness of Elah, king of Israel, and Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, 1 Kings 16, 8 through 9, and chapter 20, 16, cross-reference Hosea 7, 5, serves to illustrate the same. When rulers, both kings and priests, desire strong drink, they forget what is decreed and pervert the rights of all the afflicted. Not surprisingly, one of the qualifications for spiritual leadership in the church is that leaders not be addicted to wine. 1 Timothy 3, verse 3, and Titus chapter 1, verse 7. No leader in any of God's ordained institutions can afford to have a mind clouded by substance. Such behavior negatively impacts others. Leaders must have a higher standard. They have a responsibility not only to themselves and their families, but to those they serve. Often throughout Scripture, drunkenness appears side by side with adultery or other sexual sins, indicating the quick downward spiral for both secular and religious leaders who practice substance abuse. Intemperance leads to shameful activities. It is unseemly, as it turns a leader into a beast. And to lose respect in leadership is to lose leadership. Guard it. Keep your integrity at all times. You were elected to serve others, not indulge yourself. Notice that the following proverb directly proceeds from the one we just read. Give strong drink to him who is perishing, and wine to him whose life is bitter. Let him drink and forget his poverty and remember his trouble no more. Proverbs 31, verses 6 through 7. Whereas drink is not for kings, it does have its uses. Psalm 104, verse 15 states that wine makes man's heart glad. This is illustrated by the Samaritan who gives drink to the wounded traveler in Luke 10:34. Paul prescribes it to his ailing understudy, Timothy, stating, "No longer drink water exclusively, but use a little wine for the sake of your stomach and your frequent ailments." 1 Timothy 5, verse 23. In conclusion, drinking wine is not a sin in the Old Testament, Deuteronomy 14:26, but drunkenness is, Isaiah chapter 28, verse 7. So it is in New Testament times as well. This teaching of Proverbs regarding wine is illustrative of the need for selflessness. Rather than personally indulging, one can prescribe alcohol prudently for medicinal and other conservative purposes when necessary. Here then is the principle of self-denial and service to others. While Scripture does not state hard and fast that consumption of alcohol is sinful, it does repeatedly warn against the sin of drunkenness and its results. The stakes are much higher as this principle relates to leaders. Nothing should be practiced that impairs one's ability to reason and judge with biblical precepts. Therefore, the leader's standard should be higher because they set an example with their behavior. Consider 1 Corinthians 10, verse 31, which says, "Whether then you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God." May God give you self-control and great wisdom when it comes to alcohol. We have touched on some pretty sensitive topics in the last two chapters, looking at the damage done by self-indulgence. Now we're going to look at the institution that could most impact individuals in society to seek after righteousness rather than self-indulgence. That is, the family. Can biblically inspired parenting make the difference? Chapter 22, Study Questions. Questions and answers, alcohol and office. Alcohol can become a public servant's greatest enemy. Readily available at dinners and receptions, it is easy for a public servant whose job includes socializing to over-imbibe. This chapter looks to the book of Proverbs to provide clarity, wisdom, and advice about this prickly issue. Questions for public servants. What was the outcome when Noah drank to excess? What does Proverbs warn is a result of excessive drinking? Is drinking considered a sin in Scripture? If so, why? If not, under what circumstances is it acceptable? Discussion questions for leaders. This study discusses the dangers present when discipline is absent in a leader. What consequences are possible when a lack of self-control is exhibited by leadership? Have you observed or encountered this type of behavior? What practical wisdom did you gain in observation? The study presents the idea that hanging out with wicked people quickly loosens one's attachment to instruction. Do you agree or disagree? Why or why not? In what ways can this affect your judgment and responsibilities? The difficult question, what effect does alcohol have on you personally, on your behavior, on your appearance? This concludes chapter 22.